Jake Thompson's human fists smashed the Ferengi's face so hard the alien's teeth cracked as Thompson roared in rage, for he knew the alien leader Craxon intended to launch a full-scale war against humanity based on false pretenses, but he knew humanity would make the aliens regret this deception with all their black alien hearts. Jake was a grizzled, battle-hardened veteran of the brutal human-Ferengi war. Now serving as the human ambassador to the Ferengi homeworld, he found himself in a tense meeting with the conniving Ferengi High Council. The Ferengi leader, Craxon, had just accused humans of violating the peace treaty by secretly developing a planet-destroying superweapon. Jake knew this was a bold-faced lie, a flimsy pretext for the Ferengi to launch another war. The alien scum had likely been rebuilding their military in secret, hoping to catch humanity with its guard down, but humanity would not be broken or bow to these alien overlords if Jake didn't act fast to expose this Ferengi plot and mobilize humanity's defenses. Billions of human lives across the galaxy would be snuffed out by the bloodthirsty Ferengi war machine. The survival of the human species itself hung in the balance. Jake knew he had to move fast if humanity hoped to weather the coming storm. Jake's fist throbbed as he stormed into the human embassy, rage still coursing through his veins. He headed straight for the secure communications room, slamming his palm on the scanner to gain access. Once inside, he punched in the codes to connect with Earth, the blue light of the holographic display casting harsh shadows across his face. "Thompson, what's going on? Your bio readings are off the charts," General Graves said, his brow furrowed in concern. "The Ferengi are planning to attack, sir. Craxon accused us of violating the treaty, but it's a damn lie. They're just looking for an excuse to start another war." Graves leaned back in his chair, his expression skeptical. "Are you certain? It seems unlikely they'd risk another defeat so soon." Jake shook his head. "I have intel from my spies confirming it. The Ferengi have been secretly building up their fleet and developing new weapons. They're planning something big." The general's face hardened. "Understood. We'll begin mobilizing our forces immediately, but—" He hesitated, glancing off-screen. "A significant portion of our fleet is currently engaged in peacekeeping operations in the Zeta Quadrant. It'll take time to recall them." Jake slammed his fist on the console. "We may not have that kind of time, sir. I need to find out more about their plans." Graves nodded. "Do what you can to stall them and gather intel. We're counting on you, Thompson. Earth out." Over the next few days, Jake worked tirelessly, meeting with his network of informants and hacking into Ferengi databases. The information he uncovered was disturbing. "They're working with the Zorgons," he reported to Graves during their next briefing. "That's how they've been able to build their fleet undetected. The Zorgons have advanced cloaking tech." Graves swore under his breath. "And their new weapons?" "Some kind of advanced energy weapon capable of penetrating our shields," Jake confirmed, his stomach twisting at the thought. The general's face was grim. "Our fleet is still spread thin. We need more time." Jake's mind raced, desperately searching for a solution. Suddenly an idea struck him. It was risky, perhaps even suicidal, but it might be their only chance. "Sir, I have a plan. If I can infiltrate the Ferengi's main weapons research facility and sabotage their new energy weapon before they can deploy it." He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Graves studied him for a long moment. "It's a dangerous gamble, Thompson, but given our current situation, we may not have a choice. Do what you must. The fate of humanity rests on your shoulders." Jake nodded solemnly, his jaw set with determination. He would not let his people down. Even if it cost him his life, he would ensure that humanity survived to fight another day. Jake knew he needed a team of the best and brightest to pull off this high-stakes mission. He tapped Dr. Ethan Reeves, a whip-smart scientist who had been analyzing Ferengi energy weapons. Reeves was confident he could find a way to take them offline. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, an ace pilot with a knack for slipping past enemy defenses, was brought in to infiltrate the facility. Rounding out the squad was Sergeant John Davis, a battle-hardened soldier who knew Ferengi tactics inside and out. Using a Zorgon cloaking device they had managed to swipe, the team slipped past the Ferengi homeworld's defenses and made planetfall undetected. They crept through the dense jungle surrounding the weapons lab, Martinez deftly avoiding the sensor arrays. At the perimeter fence, Davis made quick work of the guards with his silenced plasma rifle. Martinez hacked the security lock, and the team was in. They wound through the sterile corridors, dispatching patrols with brutal efficiency. In the main lab, they found their target, the prototype of the Ferengi's new superweapon. Reeves cracked his knuckles and got to work, his fingers flying over the control panel. Suddenly, alarms blared. The team had been discovered. Ferengi guards poured into the room, energy weapons blazing. Jake and the others took cover behind workstations, returning fire. Bolts of searing energy crisscrossed the room as both sides fought with desperate ferocity. Reeves cried out as he was hit, collapsing to the floor in a growing pool of blood. But with his last breath he looked up at Jake, smiled weakly, and croaked out, "It's done." Jake gritted his teeth and gave the order to evacuate. Davis scooped up Reeves's body, and they fought their way back out of the facility. They piled into their waiting ship and rocketed into the sky, the Ferengi hot on their heels. As they broke orbit and jumped to warp speed, they picked up a transmission. Craxon barking orders for the Ferengi fleet to attack immediately. Jake's heart sank. Had their mission been for nothing? But then a distress beacon lit up the cockpit, a human colony under Ferengi assault. The war had already begun. Sabotage or no, Jake programmed in the colony's coordinates. Maybe they could still make a difference, buy time for the human fleet to mobilize. He just prayed they wouldn't arrive too late. The dropship shuddered as it hit the colony's atmosphere, the shock waves of distant explosions rocking the hull. Lieutenant Martinez gripped the controls, her knuckles white as she guided the craft towards the besieged settlement. Beside her, Jake stared grimly out the viewport at the chaos unfolding below. The colony was in flames, its buildings reduced to rubble by the relentless Ferengi bombardment. The colonists fought back with everything they had, their weapons fire crisscrossing the battlefield, but it was clear they were outmatched. The Ferengi forces advanced methodically, their energy weapons cutting through the human defenses like a scythe through wheat. As the dropship touched down, Jake and his team leapt out, weapons at the ready. They were immediately engulfed in the din of battle, the air thick with smoke and the stench of charred flesh. Jake barked orders over the comm, directing his squad to take up defensive positions. "Lieutenant, any word from the fleet?" Jake shouted over the roar of gunfire. Martinez shook her head, her face grim. "They're still hours out, sir. The Zorgon mines are giving them hell." Jake cursed under his breath. They were on their own. He scanned the battlefield, his tactical mind whirring. They needed to buy time, to give the colonists a fighting chance. "All right, listen up," he said, his voice steely. "We go guerrilla, hit and run, keep them off balance, target their command centers, their supply lines. We make them bleed for every inch." The team nodded, their faces set with determination. They knew the odds, knew the risks, but they were the best of the best, and they would not go down without a fight. Over the next few hours they struck like lightning, appearing out of nowhere to rain destruction on the Ferengi forces before vanishing back into the shadows. They took out a munitions depot with a well-placed grenade, sending a fireball into the sky. They ambushed a Ferengi patrol, leaving no survivors. They sabotaged a communication relay, throwing the invaders into disarray. But the Ferengi adapted quickly, their tactics evolving to counter the humans' guerrilla warfare. Soon Jake and his team found themselves hunted, the Ferengi dogging their every step. They were running out of time and options. In a last desperate gamble, Jake turned to Martinez. "Lieutenant, I need you to lead a diversion, hit their main landing zone, draw their fire. Buy us some time." Martinez nodded grimly, understanding the enormity of what he was asking. She and her squad would be bait, a sacrificial lamb to the slaughter. But she did not hesitate. "Yes, sir. Give 'em hell." As Martinez and her team raced towards the Ferengi landing zone, guns blazing in a futile display of defiance, Jake and Sergeant Davis slipped aboard the Ferengi flagship. They moved like ghosts, dispatching guards with ruthless efficiency as they fought their way to Craxon's command chamber. But when they burst through the doors, they found themselves facing down a squad of elite Ferengi warriors, armed with the very energy weapons Dr. Reeves had died to sabotage. The air crackled with the hum of the weapons powering up, the odds suddenly, terrifyingly against them. Jake and Davis fought like men possessed, their rifles barking, the acrid smell of plasma filling the air. But it was not enough. The Ferengi advanced, their weapons spitting death, and Jake felt the cold hand of defeat closing around his heart. And then, miraculously, the Ferengi weapons began to spark and whine, the telltale sign of a catastrophic overload. The warriors looked down at their guns in horror, realizing too late the trap they had walked into. The weapons exploded in a blinding flash, the force of the detonation hurling the Ferengi across the room. When the smoke cleared, only Craxon was left standing, his once proud face twisted with rage and desperation. Jake leveled his rifle at the Ferengi leader's chest, his finger tightening on the trigger. "It's over, Craxon," he growled. "Surrender and your people may yet survive." But Craxon only laughed, a harsh, grating sound devoid of humor. "Surrender? To you never. I will die first and take you with me." With a roar, the Ferengi leader charged, a blade flashing in his hand. Jake met him head-on, rifle clattering to the floor as they grappled in a deadly embrace. They traded blows, fists and feet and elbows, in a brutal, no-holds-barred brawl. Jake felt Craxon's blade slice across his ribs, felt the warm rush of blood. But he did not slow, did not falter. He hammered at the Ferengi with all his strength, all his skill, all his unbreakable human will. And in the end, as the two leaders stood locked together, battered and bleeding, Jake felt Craxon's strength begin to fail. With a final titanic effort, he drove his knee into the Ferengi's groin, doubling him over, and then brought his elbow down like a hammer on the back of Craxon's skull. The Ferengi leader crumpled to the floor and lay still, his reign of terror at an end. Jake stood over him, chest heaving, blood dripping from his many wounds. He had won. Humanity had won. But the cost had been high, and Jake knew that the scars of this war would linger long after the last shot was fired. Jake's fist slammed into Craxon's jaw, sending the Ferengi leader staggering back. Blood poured from Craxon's mouth, but he laughed, a sickening gurgle. "How you think you've won, human?" Craxon spat, his eyes wild. "This is only the beginning." Jake advanced, his own wounds screaming with each step. "It's over, Craxon. Surrender now, and maybe your people will survive." Craxon's laughter grew, echoing off the walls of the ruined command chamber. "Surrender? To you? Never. The Zorgons were just the start. We've made new allies, human. Allies that will crush your pitiful species into dust." Jake's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "The Qualat," Craxon hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "They will come and they will burn your worlds, enslave your people. All they ask is for the territories you now hold. A small price, don't you think?" Jake's mind raced. The Qualat. He had heard whispers, rumors of a power in the dark reaches of space, but to think they would ally with the Ferengi. He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. He needed information, needed to know what they were up against, and Craxon was going to give it to him. "You're coming with me," Jake growled, reaching for the Ferengi leader. "You're going to tell us everything you know about these Qualat." But before he could lay hands on Craxon, the room shuddered, alarms blaring to life. Jake's head snapped up, his eyes widening as a Zorgon stealth ship shimmered into view through the viewport, its weapons already glowing with deadly intent. "Looks like your new friends don't want any loose ends," Jake snarled, hauling Craxon to his feet. The Zorgon ship opened fire, lances of energy slicing through the flagship's hull. Explosions rocked the chamber, consoles bursting into showers of sparks. Jake saw Davis thrown like a rag doll, his body smashing against the far wall with a sickening crunch. No time to mourn, no time for anything but survival. Jake dragged Craxon through the chaos, the Ferengi's blood mingling with his own as they stumbled into the corridor. Behind them, the command chamber collapsed in a fireball, the heat searing Jake's back. They ran, staggered, fell. The flagship was coming apart around them, the Zorgon ship's relentless assault tearing it to pieces. Jake's vision blurred, his injuries taking their toll, but he pushed on, driven by desperation, by the knowledge that if he failed, if he died here, humanity would be lost. Somehow they made it to the hangar bay, to the waiting dropship. Jake shoved Craxon inside, sealing the hatch behind them. He fell into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls. The dropship roared to life, surging forward just as the flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light. They tumbled through space, riding the shockwave, the dropship shuddering and groaning with the strain. And then they were clear, limping away from the burning wreckage, the battle still raging around them. Jake slumped back in his seat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. They had made it. Craxon was his prisoner. The information he held the key to humanity's survival. But the cost? Martinez, Davis, Reeves, his team, his friends, all gone, sacrificed in the name of duty, in the name of a war that had only just begun. In the distance he could see the human fleet engaging the Ferengi, could see the tide turning at last. The colony would be saved, the invasion repelled. But Jake knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that this was only the first battle in a much larger war. The Qualat were coming, and humanity would need every ounce of strength, every shred of courage to face the storm that was about to break. Jake closed his eyes, the weight of the future pressing down on him like a physical force. He thought of Martinez, of her bravery, her sacrifice. He thought of Davis, of Reeves, of all the soldiers who had given their lives for the cause. He would not let their deaths be in vain. He would fight, would bleed, would die if necessary, to see humanity through this darkness. It was his duty, his calling. As the dropship limped towards the nearest human outpost, Jake began to plan, to strategize. He would need a new team, the best of the best, to take the fight to the Qualat. He would need information, resources, allies. But most of all, he would need hope. Hope that even in the face of overwhelming odds, in the face of an enemy that sought to extinguish the very light of human civilization, there was still a chance for victory. It was a slim hope, a fragile hope. But it was all he had, and Jake Thompson would cling to it, nurture it, fan it into a flame that would light the way through the coming darkness. For he was human, and humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, did not go quietly into the night. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.